All right, guys. So bringing a little more podcast action your way this week. And it's Tim and Lauren this time. You just get us this week. And I kind of just wanted to pick Tim's brain because this came through my email earlier this week from Esports Insider. And I didn't even know, Tim. First of all, they're out of London. So we might have to make a trip.
I guess we got to go to London.
But we were, I was looking through and the first thing that popped up was those layoffs. And this is a massive layoff. So this is with CLG. And this was just a few days ago, reportedly laying off almost all the staff amid a potential acquisition by NRG. That's supposed to happen today, Thursday. What is today's date? April 6th, I think it is. And that's just incredibly, anytime you hear somebody getting laid off, losing a job, losing a position, but then in the esports industry itself, I immediately think of all the players too. So lots to unpack here. What were your first thoughts?
Just kind of bummed because CLG has been in the esports world almost since like the inception of North America. They've been kind of a staple in the League of Legends scene. They've been doing great things in the fighting game community as well. They, just signed Smash players. They were kind of on the, they took a big dip, I would say, in the last few years. But very recently, they've been kicking ass. They've been doing great. They were doing so well. So many good things were happening, and just kind of feels like the rug was pulled under them all of a sudden. So very sad that a lot of talented people are, going to be immediately working, and hopefully they can find new jobs quickly because what they were doing at CLG was really, really good.
Yeah, and they even said somewhere in this article here, it said, lead candidate for sale might be North American Esports Organization, NRG, but they were unable to exactly confirm. So, but again, and then I'm reading something here too, Esports Organization, the Guard laying off all employees, another wave of layoffs hits Esports. That's, if you're a gamer, that's got to be kind of anxiety provoking, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think the bubble is popping. I think a lot of people hired a lot of talent, and they're kind of realizing now that okay, we can't really keep this up. We have to pull back. I think especially some of them hired way too quickly to kind of catch up. Like the relatively newer ones. That's why it's the CLG was the most surprising because they've been around for so long. You'd think they kind of got an understanding of what their income is versus what they're spending. But yeah, a lot of the spaces are kind of pulling back and moving away to more remote as well because a lot of the organizations are based in Los Angeles, which is not cheap.
No.
But I think they're realizing that now. There's other places in the United States that we can be headquartered in. So hopefully, I'm not saying that's going to fix everything moving out of LA. That's not the save all, but I think there are other options. But yeah, I think most of it's toning back on what we currently have and reassessing, next year in the future for esports for sure.
Good information. As far as gamers and stuff like that, and I'm clicking over to this page so you guys can see what we were reading through too. Who directly, it's going to obviously directly affect their if you had signed with them and all of that, right? But then is there a trickle down effect?
Yeah, probably. For the Fear, where I would say, we're not quite at the level of NRG, CLG, those are like tier 1 organizations. And then I would put us at a tier 2. And, I think things won't be as expensive, right? In terms of the organization overhead, we're pretty low cost, I think. I think we do a good job at that. But hopefully, we're able to look at talent and, being able to find homes for these players and content creators and staff, and not necessarily the tier 1, but maybe some other tier 2 orgs and start picking those up. And I think the overall salary, though, of players definitely hit an all-time high. In League of Legends, there were rumors of a $6 million player, and that's extremely high for a player that necessarily isn't bringing back revenue through broadcast rights, ticket sales, things like that from the organization. So I think certain player salaries will start to dip.
Mhm.
Some communities might not be affected as much as others for sure, but I do think there'll be an overall lower uh, floor for players for the salary wise.
And obviously there's a lot of money exchanged there as you were talking about. You know, it's crazy to think that you're sitting there one day and I mean, I'm sure they were hearing or there may even be people I'd love to hear from them who, knew that Counter Logic was kind of going down and had maybe reached out for something and found some other avenues and to keep themselves afloat for a while. But I mean, these are professional high ranking players, right? That are
Mhm.
now losing that representation.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
The last, like we talked about earlier before this, the two Smash players for CLG
Hmm.
just signed with them a couple months ago, and now they have to redo that whole process. So that's
Oh,
super stressful on their end. I bet
yeah,
very kind of like just unfortunate for them, and they just redoing that whole process just sucks. Like
yeah,
it's not fun for
yeah.
either side, and I feel for them for sure.
Yeah, I do too. And then, I saw in here, oh, gosh, I mean, there's just so many different things. And it said something about them. The news follows a report last week by Sports Business Journal that fellow LCS team TSM would pull out of, quote, several titles and was considering selling its LCS spot as well.
Yes, that is still like what is a rumor, what isn't a rumor. The
Gotcha.
CLG thing is like confirmed happening, and the
Yeah.
TSM thing is still kind of like, what are they gonna do? I do think um, they're moving away from spending a lot of money. So
Yeah.
for the uninitiated, they had a big deal with crypto in
Hmm.
FTX, and I believe that deal was upwards of $210 million, and they lost that because FTX went under and no longer there. There's a big court case with it,
Wow.
and so TSM lost that deal, and I'm sure that just shook their entire company because that was money they were expecting to have come in for the next decade, and it's not there anymore. Um,
Jeez. Oh, yeah.
so them having to recover from that, and I'm sure they will because TSM is one of the more well-known brands in North America. They have a huge following, so I hope they can find their feet and get back on it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with them in the future because they're kind of a developing story. So we'll just kind of wait and see what happens.
Reporter Tim on the
Yeah,
beat.
right.
I know. And then a lot of these, I mean, just going through these, like the guard laying off all employees and going through there, like you said, I think they're like looking to, I mean, a ton of them. There's even more
Mhm.
articles under here that I'm looking at. And it's like, this is not just like the big wigs up top. This is employees in content, social, creative, talent departments. I
Mhm.
mean, does this scare you as far as like the world of esports and where it's headed, or is it just a change you think for the industry itself,
A little bit of
like
both.
becoming more remote? Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think as long as people enjoy competitive gaming, esports will always be around in some way, in some shape or form. But this is also kind of a learning block, I think, for a lot of companies to try and basically relearn how to make profit off of esports because it is very different from your typical traditional sport
Yeah.
um, in terms of where revenue comes from. So I think it's a big trip and fall, but I think we'll get back up and we'll figure out where to go from here.
Yeah. I like that. Did I miss anything? I mean, I know that was kind of short and sweet when we were talking about this, but I feel like we hit all the important,
No,
factors and
yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I think us as like the tier 2 organization, I think we
Mhm.
can learn a lot from what has happened above us and kind of hopefully not make those same missteps and kind of just learn from them. So
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
That's pretty like it's hard to gauge it all, but yeah, I feel for all the people who are laid off, and especially just getting noticed 2 or 3 days before. It's like, well, whole world's upside down now.
Yeah. or just signing on, like you said,
Yeah,
Smash
right.
players, and then all of a sudden, like there's nothing.
Like, all right, let's do it again. Run it back.
Ugh,
Ugh.
ugh.
So, but yeah, I mean that's the short and sweet of it for sure. I think it's just kind of a lot of news all at once, especially is really kind of shocking.
Mhm.
So we'll just kind of see where the scene goes from there.
And with that, we'll end on that. Hopefully, we'll be back with something sweeter in the next few
Yeah,
weeks.
for sure.
Well, thank you, Tim. Guys, hope you liked that. If you have any ideas, comments, questions, concerns, all that good stuff, chime in. And we will see you in a few weeks.